There we go. Okay, Dave, all yours for opening up.
Great, thanks, Grace, and thanks for sending out the agenda. Welcome, everybody, to the August edition of the Referees Rant. As Grace has sent out with the agenda, so I have a number of questions which I'll start tonight with that people have submitted in advance. And then the half hour will be over, basically. So you can probably forget the rest of the agenda. But we will attempt to get through any feedback or questions or comments from tournaments over the last month. The skinny singles rules that were sent out, if anyone has any questions. I'm just going to give a brief outline of referees' courses at the APC. Tournaments coming up, then Grace has got some news on the working with children, and then at 7 o'clock, which is going to be a bit of a hard line finish for us, we've got David Andrew, the Chief Operating Officer of the NPL, joining us to run through some changes for Season 2. So what I'm going to ask you to do, if anybody would like to answer these questions, if you can put pick me in the chat, just type pick me and then I will ask you to answer it. So I won't necessarily highlight who sent these questions in for fear of offending anyone. But the first one comes back to probably a favourite topic, not really. And the question is, what should a referee do if at the completion of a game, which is the first game of a 3-game match, a player from the losing team throws their paddle in frustration with complete disregard for those around him? As the throwing of the paddle in this way would normally incur a technical foul, and I'll question that to start with, does the referee need to issue one as the game has been completed? And if so, does that mean the opposing team would start game 2 with a point? Anyone want to answer that? I'm not seeing any pick me's. Okay, I guess it's me. So firstly, one thing I'd like to highlight was the wording in the question, which was complete disregard. Oh, sorry, I've got Peter's got a hand up. So Peter's iPad, you can answer the question.
Well, I'll try to, David. Yes, the complete disregard is a giveaway there. And the fact that it's only the first game of a best of 3, I imagine, was the scene, then certainly the referee is still well in charge of the situation when that game has been completed. So he'd be well within his rights to issue, I would think, a verbal warning, because no one was injured, even though he's thrown it with total disregard. I still think a verbal warning would be sufficient at that stage. So that would nullify the idea of the other team starting with point at 0-0.
Okay, so let me just be clear. If you're throwing a paddle, we don't start with a verbal warning. The minimum penalty is a technical foul. So
okay, I guess the rider there for me is, it's not said where he's thrown it. Was it into the court, into the crowd, at himself? I don't know, without knowing the full scene.
Yeah, sure. And look, I think the wording that we got to be careful of here is complete disregard. If somebody has no control and no care for what they've done, they're not the kind of people that should be frankly playing the game. So I would have no issue if a referee awarded a match forfeit in this circumstance, because what we don't want to see is a paddle flying and hitting someone in the head. I was shown video over the last week of a paddle that was conservatively thrown 40 metres at the Jar in Melbourne. No, it didn't hit anyone, but it went over a crowd of spectators and could have hit people. So we need to be really careful that this has to be stamped out of the game. We do not want people throwing paddles. So, as I said, I have no issue if someone awarded a match forfeit. If you only want to award a technical foul, then the question is, where does it go? Do you take a point off for the match is just complete, or do you make it impact the next game? So what we're trying to look at here is what is going to give the best impact for them not to do it again. And that would be to award a point to the other team starting the next game at 1-0, simply because that means that this team is already down. So that is the answer to that question. I haven't seen anybody jump in to say no or disagree. So I'll move to question 2. A player attempts an earning but does not make contact with the ball. In doing so, however, the player lands past the plane of the net. Is this a fault? Anyone want to answer that? It's a pretty clear question and pretty easy answer. Come and just the David speak. The answer is yes, it is a fault because the player has crossed onto the opponent's side of the court without making contact with the ball prior. The third question is, during a game to 11, the score is 7-5. Player A, who is on 7 points, incurs a technical foul after already receiving a technical warning, resulting in a match forfeit. Is the score recorded as 11-7 or 11-0 to player B? Anyone want to have a go?
11-7.
What was that, Pete?
11-7 to player B.
11-7. Any other ones want to have a go?
11-0.
11-0, Len.
Yep.
Anyone for any else?
11-0.
11-0, Janet.
Yep.
11-0 match forfeit.
Thank you, Paul. I think the 11-0s have it. So we're running with the 11-0, which is the correct answer. Question 4. I like these very detailed questions. A spectator was sitting near the court and was whistling loudly to get another crowd member's attention. It was quite distracting for me as a referee, and the team closest appeared also frustrated, but didn't call a hindrance. Can I call a hindrance for something like that if I was distracted, or should I leave that to the player initiation? I know a ref can call a hinder like a ball on a court, but I do that for safety reasons more so than playability. Thoughts?
I would go and speak to the spectator.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
Yep, I agree. Can you hear me?
Take a
Or
referee
referee
time out.
time out and go and speak to the spectator.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can certainly do that. And there is no reason you can't call a referee timeout and speak to the spectator. Although just be careful that you don't buy an argument with spectators. You know, one of the things that was, you know, you almost want to forget the people in the grandstands. And even if it is distracting, you can call a referee timeout. You could move to the centre of the court and, you know, make it sort of clear and sort of tap your ear and point to the spectator without actually going and talking to the spectator. Because the last thing, particularly we do have some people around that do watch the game that tend to have short fuses. So just be careful you don't buy an argument. Of course, you can talk to them, just not if you wish.
Yeah, and wait until the end of the game before they insult you.
Let's
Brian's got his hand
not
up.
get referees assaulted, please. That would be really, really not a good thing if you don't mind.
Brian's got his hand up, Dave.
Oh, sorry, Brian, I missed you. I've only got about 5 people showing on the top. So if I don't get you, just type me in the chat, because I have got the chat open so I can see that.
Where's the chat?
Is Luke not harassing Fabian?
I missed that.
No.
David, I have asked the spectator to move behind the fence on the request of a player that they were a hindrance at the Australian Open 2 years ago.
Yep.
They were videoing the match from high up on the tennis seat, and I was asked by the player, and it was a reasonable request that the person there was a hindrance. And I asked them to go behind the fence.
Yeah. And it's all, and Brian, you're 100% right. It's just about how you deal with it. If you deal with it in a friendly, sensible manner, you'll get generally a friendly, sensible response. So yeah, good work. I think I've got there, Mike Kane has put me in the chat. So Mike, I guess you want to say something.
Yeah, thanks. I have no issues whatsoever identifying that question was mine. At the jar at the NPL point, and I have to apologise. I saw Len there. I did ask Len and Michelle on the day, but then immediately went straight on court again and completely forgot what they'd advised me. That's why I submitted it here. At the end of the day, when I was there, I remember distinctly hearing him whistle about 4 times. Like it was like a one-off whistle to get someone's attention. And I remember looking across. It wasn't even a conscious decision to look across. You hear a whistle, you look. If the ball had gone out or a call was made at that point by a team that it was out, I wouldn't have seen a thing because I was distracted as the ref. So in that situation, I was happy that the players didn't call it. So I was happy to let the players guide what happened with that particular ball. If they didn't call the hindrance, I wasn't going to step in. I was about to go and talk to him, and then the players actually went and spoke to him and just clearly said, "Mate, we're trying to play. Could you just..." And he's like, "Oh, sorry." And there was no issue. There was nothing happened in the end. But I guess it was more to the point that if at that distinct moment where I looked across because he had whistled and someone had called out and then the other team disputed because they didn't think it was, and I wasn't watching. I mean, obviously I would have to take the original call because I didn't see it. But I wonder whether I could call it hindrance at that point because I was distracted from being able to pay attention and do a replay. I guess that was more the premise of my question.
Look, and I guess the answer is you've got to ensure that you get, if we go back to the principles of pickleball about fairness and equity and about cooperation and courtesy, etc. Yeah, look, you probably can call a hindrance in the situation where you just literally
it's a referee's meeting.
Were completely taken out of the game. So I would let that run if I were you, Mike. So I'm just going to move to your next question, Mike, given that you've now, and these weren't all Mike's, by the way.
Myself. Yeah.
The first 3 weren't Mike's. He's the 5th question for the evening. The striking team hit the ball right up the middle of the court between both receivers. It went nearly 3 feet beyond the baseline, but due to the speed of the hit, both receivers didn't have time to turn around and see where it landed. I called out based on the vast obviousness of it being nearly 3 feet out. The striking team said I shouldn't call it and I should have called it in as the receivers couldn't be sure it was out. I maintained my ruling and they didn't take it to the head referee. But I feel like it should be as suitable given our rule is to oversee fair play. The striking team clearly knew it was out and were trying to gain a point on the technicality by deceiving the other team. So, again, I'll go back to the fairness rule and the start of the rule book about cooperation and courtesy, and your opponents always get the benefit of the doubt. So clearly the striking team was not acting in that way. But they are right to an extent, of course, that line calls are not the referee's responsibility unless it is appealed to the referee. But where players can't see it, they can always ask the referee. So in that circumstance, and you know that they didn't see it, you could, before you called it, have simply said to the players, do you want me to call it? And of course, if they haven't seen it, they will say yes, and then you call it as you did. That way you're not making a call without being invited to do so. Does that make sense, Mike?
Much better idea. Yeah, exactly. I'll do that in future. Because no one's, I mean, if I'm asking a team, do you want to appeal? It's like, obviously they're going to say yes in that scenario. So
yeah, so it's not about asking to appeal. If you are clearly there, if they couldn't see it and you know they can't see it, would you like me to make a call? You're not giving them one way or the other what you're going to call. You are just offering them that as a choice, and then if they haven't seen it, they'll probably ask you to do it.
Yeah, okay.
And the final question that you had was the quality of nets at our club are questionable. The net is portable with posts and a crossbar. And then it goes on to the rule that you're relating to. And what you're saying is happening is during a rally, and I'm going to short circuit your question if you don't mind, because it goes on for a bit. Your strikers have hit the ball. It has not gone over the net, but has stayed on the striker's side of the net, but got caught up in the net. Okay. Now, and what you're saying is, or what the argument is because the ball didn't hit the ground, it is a replay. Right. Now, it would be a replay if it went over the net and got caught up in the net or hit that crossbar on the other side. But what hasn't occurred is it hasn't crossed the net in the first place. So therefore, it would be a fault against the striker of the ball. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I thought the rule said that's only on the serve, it says. The problem is I don't think it accounts for the fact that you can hit the ball with a terrible net and have it not go over but still get stuck between the crossbar, because the crossbar is actually on the other side of the court, on the receiving sides.
Yeah, but it's got to have gone over the net. It hasn't gone over the net.
Okay, so even if it doesn't hit the ground.
Yep, it's a fault.
Okay.
Okay. Brian, is that you wanting to have an opinion there?
I was back on the last question, David. And I did a game in the para game where there was a disabled athlete with a leg prosthetic playing against one that had some mental disability, shall we say. And he didn't call balls out. So there's an obvious disparity there.
Yep.
And maybe in certain circumstances such as this, those obvious balls that are out, we should use a discretionary power as well.
Yeah, and look, I totally agree with you, and I don't know the circumstance that you're talking about, but I do know individuals of that ilk. And I think what you do there, Brian, is if you see that, it's actually worth going and talking to that player. And saying,
yeah, I did at the end of the game.
Yeah, I'm during the game. During the game.
Okay.
Saying, would you like me to call the balls for you? I see that you're having difficulty. And then once you've done that, of course, then tell the other player that that player has requested you to call the balls on his side of the court.
Yeah, because I felt it was quite unfair during the game that this was happening, and I felt hamstrung.
Yeah, and remember, go back to the overarching rules in the front cover are all about cooperation and courtesy, and the opponent gets the benefit of that. If we apply those, then then you are asked away. He doesn't have to take what you say, and if he doesn't want you to do it, that's fine. But I think in most cases you will find that they will want every bit of assistance that they can.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mike, does that answer all your questions?
I feel like that's enough for one meeting.
And look, I do have another one. And look, I'm going to have to out you here, Hugh, because I don't actually understand the question. So is Hugh Widdop on the call?
I don't think so.
Well, then we're not going to be none the wiser because I'm sorry, I'll have to go back to Hugh and just ask him because I don't understand the question. So, look at that. We have 8 minutes left and we've got 5 agenda items to get through. So,
I didn't understand that question of Hughes either, Dave, so it's okay.
thank you. Feedback from tournaments over the last month. From everything I hear, and judging by the commentary on the web or the WhatsApp, everything seems to have gone really, really well. Is there anything that anybody wants to call out or say? But congratulations to everyone for what they've done.
Okay, on the weekend at Ballina, a player came up to me before an event started and questioned another player's paddle and questioning that it was delaminated. And at this stage, the briefing was on. So I wanted to go to my, the WhatsApp to see the procedure, what I had to do, the wording of it, and whether Brian as the tournament director had to do it or me as the head ref had to do it. And I realized that there was a head ref, but I quickly went up to her and said that a player has questioned your paddle about delamination. And she said that, oh, my paddle, it wasn't, she said, my paddle is only 2 months old. It was questioned at my last tournament and a referee checked it and said it was okay. Now, Kelvin, it was you, so you might be able to add on to this as well. And she was able to play with it. Now, I know my husband was warming up with her the day before and said, wow, she's hitting that ball really, really hard. But he never actually said to me about the donking sound. And he knows what the donking sound of the jeweler's band paddle sounds like. So I sort of thought, well, Kelvin, I don't know about the feel of the paddle and all that. And she said, oh, Kelvin checked it out. And he said there were a few soft spots. And I sort of thought, should there be soft spots in a paddle? I do not know. I don't know what a delaminated paddle looks like. So I left it at that. She started playing her first game. It was 5-3. I walked past it and I just heard this very distinctive donk, donk, donk. And I thought, I just stopped the game and said she couldn't play with it. And she said, how can you prove it? And I said, I don't have to prove it. I said, the donking sound is enough for me. You have another paddle that you can use? And she said, yes. And I said, I'll give you time to warm up. And she went to get the next paddle. It was a jeweler, would you believe? But it was okay. It was a Gen 2. But the paddle that she was using was a 0.60. So obviously any paddle can be delaminated, I presume. I just took it on that donking sound that it was delaminated. And everybody else was happy in that event because I had done that. And she won the event anyhow, and she won it fair and square. And therefore everyone was happy. But she didn't win it like there weren't those big, hard-hitting ones. So in the long run, she won fair and square. So that was good. So what did you, Kelvin, what did you do when you tried to work out whether it was okay or not?
So before we start going down this delaminated route and us being experts in that, can I just hold you there? Because what we have is very specific instructions around this. And what you've told me from what you said, Janet, you shouldn't have allowed that paddle in the first place. And the reason for that is that we don't have the testing in Australia to be able to test whether a paddle is delaminated or not. So that is where we've come up with those specific instructions. I played with a paddle yesterday myself, and after about 3 shots, I put that paddle away and went and got another one because I knew it was delaminated. As what happens in Australia for now, until we can get a better solution, is if a player comes and complains about a paddle, the head referee is to go to the player whose paddle is, and the question is to be asked, is there a chance that your paddle is delaminated? The only answer that is acceptable is absolutely not. In that case, they can play with it. If they say anything other, I don't know, or anything else, it is not allowed to be played with.
But surely any
Full stop.
professional would say, no, it's not delaminated,
Well,
and get on with it.
I'm sorry, we don't have anything better than that, Janet. That's a decision that we've reached with PAA.
So is that donking sound, and it was very distinctive, it sounded exactly like those Jeweler Gen 3s, is that a sign of a
Probably.
paddle?
Probably. That probably is.
Okay.
It's worth.
You will hear different sounds on it, but we're not experts in that, and that's why we haven't been put in the position of having to make that. You know, we got to go back to, again, the rule book about cooperation and courtesy, and your opponent gets the benefit of the doubt. The benefit of the doubt is there is doubt about your paddle, so the opponent gets the benefit of the doubt, and I have to change my paddle. That's the only thing we don't have a DLAM machine here.
That's what I said to him.
Dave and Janet, Kelvin here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. So just for the record, it was reported that she was playing with a delaminated paddle. I went and checked it. I asked her initially, is it delaminated? She said no. So then she had 2 paddles in a bag. So I grabbed the ball and was hitting them and felt for any spongy bits, and there was no spongy bits in the paddle. So I didn't see a problem with the paddle whatsoever. The paddle was firm. Both paddles were firm as to press against. One was a little bit louder when the ball hit it. But I just said, no, play on. I can't see a problem with your paddle, so you can go out and play with it. Could not.
But in the answer, your first answer there, Kelvin, as the head referee, as you asked her, was there any chance? And she said there was delaminated.
Yeah.
But so that's the end of that matter. However, when it got to Janet there, the questions were, no, people have said that before. It wasn't distinctly no. Therefore, the paddle should not have been allowed to be played with.
And so what had happened, I spoke to her and we did that. And then I quickly went to my phone and I'm going through the WhatsApp trying to find the exact wording and procedure. And then I looked at it and it said, if there wasn't a definite no, and I thought, well, she didn't say a definite no. She said it had to be looked at. And that's when I went and I heard it.
Yeah, but that's where if there's not a definite no, can't use the paddle. Full stop.
Okay. And I was glad that I did it because when she won, it was a legitimate one winning and everybody was happy with it.
Yep, that's good. I've been given the hurry up here by Grace with 2 minutes left. And I do see I've got Andrew Wilson, Mike. Mike, the answer to your question, can a question about delaminated paddles be instigated by a referee to their referee or only by a player? Again, by a player. Andrew, did you have something that you wanted?
Yeah, just briefly. I did a survey a couple of Thursday nights ago, so very scientific, but there were 60 people playing and I asked all 60 of them if their paddles were delaminated and 50 of them said, what are you saying? I've got no idea what you're talking about. So and their paddles are brand new and stuff, and they weren't delaminated as far as I could tell. But I thought that ruling is really harsh because if someone goes, well, their paddle's delaminated, go and check it, and you ask that question, they don't know. Well, they're not allowed to play with their paddle. So in the rules of fairness, I thought because they weren't cheating. There was a couple there that would play in the NPL and had their own little business, and they go, oh no, our paddle's okay. But everybody else said, I've got no idea what you're talking about. So it wasn't a definite no. So they'd have to change their paddle. And a lot of these people only have one paddle.
Yeah, sorry, Andrew, but that's the rule. And that's the way it is. And that's what we're running with because we have no other option in Australia. Which I could give you another outcome.
So my question is, I've stopped her from playing with that paddle. She comes to the next event and somebody complains, I get the paddle out, it's exactly the same paddle. And I said, there's been a question about your paddle. And she said, do I ask that question again? Or I say, I haven't let you play with it last time. I'm not going to let you play with it this time. Or is your paddle delaminated? She's going to say no this time.
Yeah,
and it's exactly the same paddle.
If you know it's the same paddle, Janet, you're not going to let her play with it, are you?
Okay. As long as I can, even though she says no.
Yeah. Now, I've been given the real hurry up here from Grace. So the skinny singles rules are going to have to wait till next meeting. The APC, I just wanted to remind people that we have at the annual rules exam for every ref that's going to be there, that gets you through your requirement to do the rules. So please turn up for that and we'll have a bit of fun. There is a level 3 refs course, and I would encourage any level 2 ref that has been anything over 3 or 4 months, it's time to step up and do the next set of the next level 3 course. If we do have more than hi David, I'm just finishing a couple of things here and then I'll come to you. We do have one level 3 course there. If we have to have a second because there's demand for it, so be it, we will do that. The only other question that I have is that there is no level 2 course, but I've had a whole raft of people ask if they can do, we can put on a level 2. So could I just ask if anybody knows of anyone or anyone that's on the chat does actually want to do the level 2 course, could you just please send Grace a note so that we can just record numbers, and if we get sufficient demand, we will most certainly do it. And I see there's already one that says yes, please. And Amanda, the date the test is on, I think, is on pickleball brackets, but it's the Tuesday night, I think, before the Wednesday start to the APC. And Grace, did you quickly want to go through the working with children before we invite David Andrew?
That's okay. What I'll do is when I send out this recording, I'll put in that extra information, maybe the anything extra you wanted to put on the skinny singles or anything like that.
Right. No worries at all.
There's just a little quick bit that Brad has put in about delaminated.
Yeah.
They don't have.
Be very sure about when you think you hear the distinct sound of a delaminated or a band paddle.
Yeah.
There are other brands in the markets that are approved that have this same sound, such as the Gearbox Pro and the Paddle Tech Bantams.
Thanks, Brad. I was going to try and jump in there with that. Some of them do have a funny sound, so that can't always be the answer.
Correct.
So what were those two again? The Gearbox Pro and
in the chat, Janet.
Paddle Tech Bantam. Grace, there's a couple of people that have put notes about the courses in the chat, and also a couple of questions for next time. Have you got those?
Yeah, I've got those.
Great, thank you. So, look, Grace, I might let you introduce